Welcome to MC Report, episode number 16. We got the Joe Montana episode, so I'm going to go perfect in predicting, unlike I was last week. I did worse than Aiden. That doesn't happen often, considering, we got no NFL, college football, stuff like that. But, 0-3 in NBA, I'm like the Atlanta Falcons. And obviously college basketball, we just tied. So, we both did very well, 15-5. But, when it's a ranked team versus an unranked team, that'll happen. But we got a lot of good ranked matchups. But first, we got to talk about the NBA. I did not do so hot. I really thought we would beat the Hawks. But, Kelly Oubre, 4 for 13 shooting. Dominic Barlow put up a fat Tony Snell stat line with 1 point in 22 minutes. That's really bad. The plus-minus wasn't that bad. But, when Maxey with 28 and he shoots under 50%, which obviously you're supposed to shoot over. Not so good. He did great from the free throw line, though. We all did, so that's good. I don't know how he lost to the Pelicans. This team sucks. This is a very bad team. Oubre actually did very well. I was pleasantly surprised. But Maxey, 27 isn't that bad, but 2 of 11 shooting from the 3 is very bad. Now, we need another. I wish we traded at the trade deadline for another big men, because Drummond and Barlow are just not it at all. So, losing to a 16-win Pelicans team. Yeah, that's the Sixer way. I'm not shocked. So, and then we beat the Timberwolves, who are just national contenders. So that makes no sense. I'll take it. Despite Oubre only 18 points and the shooting wasn't that great, he did well on the defensive side. 5 rebounds, 4 steals. And VJ Edgecombe, that's my boy, 24 points. I don't know what Maxey had, but, 6 of 7 shooting from the 3. Very, very good. I'm very impressed. Although I think Oubre was the secret MVP here. He did great defensively. But obviously, we got to talk about next week. Sixers and Pacers, the spread is 6.5. I would smash that. I'm picking the Sixers. I said this with the Pelicans, in which they're not a great team, and we definitely could lose because we're in Indiana, which is where they've won 10 of their 15. But, I can't pick against the Sixers, against a bottom 5 team. You just don't do that. Now, I would not be shocked if we lose, considering what I saw from that Pelicans game. But, a fully healthy Sixers team against a fully healthy Pacers team, besides Halliburton, yeah, that should be a slaughter fest. This will be a very good game. The fact we're at home definitely helps. The Heat and the Sixers. I think what it'll come down to, weirdly enough, I think it'll be the rebounding. Not Drummond, though. It'll be Bam versus Embiid, and I think that's going to be a very good matchup. But when it all comes down to it, I just like this Sixers team more than the Heat. I think that we are much more well-rounded than the Heat are, although the Heat are also very well-rounded. But the rebounding is a bit weak besides Bam. Obviously, Bam is almost averaging a double-double, which is still pretty good. He's no, Jokic, but whatever. But you have Embiid back, hopefully. I think we can take down, especially at home, I think we can take down the Heat. This will be a very good game, though, but this also could be a game we could win or lose by 30, because we're the Sixers. We just do that. Going into Boston, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. We're going to get smacked. This Boston team, without Jason Tatum, is somehow just incredible. I don't know how they're doing this, especially since, they're, 7 games above us. I think this will still be a highly contested game. We had 2 games at the beginning of the year in which the Sixers came out on top, but this Celtics team is so talented, and I feel like they're very experienced as well. I think they're more experienced than the Sixers team, even with Maxey in his prime, Embiid in his, prime. He's injury-prone. But I think we can definitely get the win. I just don't think we will. We get to finally talk about the NHL. It's been 2 weeks. This is going to be a good one. Flyers and the Capitals. Washington. I'm very shocked by this is favored. I honestly don't think Washington is that bad of a team. But, the Flyers on the 3rd. Coming off a win against the Capitals at home, but I think the Capitals get their revenge. This is a very interesting game in which I don't think this game will be very highly watched. I think both of these teams have big flaws, big mistakes, but I think how they capitalize off those mistakes, that's who's going to win this game. I think the Capitals have these games where they just look really solid, even though they're around mid-500. Obviously, 7 OT losses. Add that up, they're below 500, 29-30. But I don't know. I just think the Capitals at home I would rather take than the Flyers at full strength, especially away. Granted, for some reason, the Flyers are better away than they are at home, but, it just come to be. This is going to be a good one. We got Ava Kelly's team taking on my team. So, both matchups have been pretty good. The Penguins decimated the Devils. That is looking generous. And then, obviously, they beat us in a shootout. But I'd like to mention, the Devils have 2 games that have went to overtime plus. The Penguins have 12. I think the Penguins have more experience. They're not going to have Sidney Crosby, but I think I would rather take a Penguins team coming off a bye than the Devils right now. I think the Devils are just, I don't want to say frauds, so Ava Kelly yells at me, but I just think that I would rather have this team that looks to be on the up and up than the Devils who seem to be on the downfall. Especially with the Devils' 1 win was all the way back in November, very early on in the NHL season. I don't know. I just would rather take the Penguins in Pittsburgh to take down the Devils in PPG, Paints Arena. Let's hope I can hit the slide. This is also a very good game. I'm just going to be cutthroat. I think the Flyers take it. I think the Rangers, both games, by the way, have been very good games. High-scoring affairs. New York's had their way with tempo. That's something they need to establish if they want to win any game, because they're a very young team. But I think the main problem, and this is kind of a weird problem, is that they have 6 wins at home out of the, 20... Oh, what's 19 plus 6? 25 games. There we go. I'm not known for math, guys. We've established this about 30 times for some reason. But I just think the Rangers, for some reason, are just terrible at home. Now, granted, I don't think it's going to really affect them that much because, you have the home field advantage. But the Rangers are just kind of on and off, and I would rather take a fully charged up Flyers team than a Rangers team. Although the Rangers, very good with tempo. I would not be shocked if they do win this game. I just don't see them winning it. I think the Flyers are out for revenge, and I think they're going to get it here against the Rangers. Once again, the Rangers at home, and I think the visiting team takes it. I think the Penguins have their number. I think the one game they caught them off guard here was an injury-prone Penguins game when they were on their downfall, and then they came back. Now, granted, the Penguins, I believe, were up 5-1 at one point, but they did still win 6-5. I just believe in this Penguins team right now. Obviously, we don't have Sidney Crosby, which is a big loss because, it's Sid the Kid. But I just can't believe in this Rangers team until they get a hot streak, something they haven't really had. So, plus, it's still very big to note that Crosby is out because he's leading everything for us. You don't see that very often in the NHL unless you're Nathan McKinnon. So, obviously, Crosby, a big loss. I don't think he's projected to play this week at all. So, hopefully we can get these wins. I still believe we can. This is another game. I think it's going to be very good. But if I had to come down to it, I'm going to take Boston. I think that Boston, even with, beating them 6-3 in Boston, I think this is just goalie-wise, which is kind of weird because you think the Flyers, they got a 2.47. At some point, you got to take this man out. You got to put the backup in, who's 8-10 on the year, and 5 of those OT losses. You take a look over here, 5 OT losses total for the Bruins all year. I just like this Bruins team. They're more consistent than the other two. I think this averages out around 3. They're both around 3, but the Bruins just have a kind of mentality in which it's either going to be a 6-5 win or it's going to be a 1-0 win. And I think the Bruins, when it comes down to it, are just going to get it. I just think that the Flyers, they've had so many tough games. There's going to be one that they're going to slip up on. I think it's this one. Obviously, you don't want to slip up on, the televised one. I feel like that's a bad look. But I think this is the one the Flyers, they catch a break. I don't think they play as hot. So, it be what it be. Oh, boy. This is going to be a good one. They only play each other twice. I wish they played each other more. But the Golden Knights and the Penguins, on TNT, 1 o'clock. It's such a weird time. That's like a football time, 1 o'clock. But I think this will be a very good game. But I think the number one thing to look out for is if the top goalie for the Golden Knights doesn't play, nobody else has played over 8 games for them. I don't know who's going to goalie. I'm not a professional when it comes to picking that. But I just think, as of right now, I would take the Golden Knights. I think maybe with Crosby, it's a different story, especially at home. I think the Golden Knights are very beatable. Anybody in the NHL seems beatable right now besides the Avalanche because, Jesus. But I just think this Golden Knights team, especially healthy, I don't know who they played before this, by the way, but even when healthy, The Penguins are not going to have Crosby, their top player, and the Golden Knights are going to be, unless an injury happens, at full strength. And I just like that better. I think the Penguins are going to need to play up to their level instead of playing at the same level, and I think that's going to be a problem. Now, granted, I don't know who's going to start. I think it would be Skinner for this game. Skinner has been on a tear recently. He's been doing really well, but even with Skinner doing well, this is going to be a tough one for him. So, we'll put the marker away because the rest is college basketball. So if you don't like that, you can click off now. I'll go quick because some of these I have talked about. This is game of the year. Absolute game of the year right here. This game went into double overtime, high-scoring affair. Bama came back, looked bad in OT, both OTs, and then hit a buzzer beater. I'm going to put the mic on the side here. Absolute cinema. This is easily the best game of college basketball so far. It's not even close. Now, granted, I like offense more than defense. But I still think Bama is a true contender, even despite, I think they're 20th now. So, I don't know. I'm a firm believer in the Crimson Tide. I am not a firm believer in UConn. What the heck is a UConn? Creighton is not good, like at all, and they just kind of just hanged around, and especially at home. A top 5 team in the nation should not be losing to a just 500 team. They just shouldn't. That's not what should happen, unless it's a rivalry, in which case this is not. It's just UConn. It looks like they didn't come to play, and I think that's the problem. Now, granted, I think the problem is that these 3 right here, you didn't know who was going to, not score. We got Nick Graves, Josh Dix, and I can't say that. And I just think Creighton came out with a game plan, and they executed. And that's what they needed to do. That's what you need to do to beat a top team. You got to execute on your game plan, and that's what they did. Arizona is still very much a very good team. I thought even with the 2 losses last week, Texas Tech and I believe it was Houston, they're a very good, very solid team. Now, BYU, I have a soft spot for. I love A.J. DeBonsta, one of the best players in the entirety of the nation, but he doesn't have a team around him. Richie Saunders coming down with an ACL tear. It's just him and a bunch of lackeys, and I don't think they can win it all with that. They stood around, obviously, a 7-point loss, especially against the number now 2 team in the nation, is not bad. But I think when it comes down to it, Arizona had depth, BYU did not. It's one man versus an entire team. Can't win like that. Although DeBonsta put up a good fight. I mean, you can see literally right here. Look at the length on that. That's a large hand. I'm actually kind of shocked he can do that. Now, granted, he's a forward. But still, I'm still very impressed by DeBonsta. He's still keeping these games, in which case they should be blown out, competitive. But I wish he was on a different team. I wish he had, something bigger. Kansas, they are an interesting team because Darren Peterson could put up 19 and 23. But my problem with it is that, obviously, this game they did win, so good for them. But 19 minutes for apparently the top player in the nation draws a lot of questions. Does he want to play for any of his teams? Does he want to, go to the NBA and be a starter? Because from what it looks like, now granted they did win this game, and he was the top scorer, I just think that in these big games, which you're going to see, Kansas cannot win. They just can't. And I think that that's a major problem. You go into March Madness, you're going to need to play some top teams to win it all. And they're not doing that. They're playing Oklahoma State. And granted, they head into the half, 14-point lead, and they came out 12-point win. But Peterson did not play in the second half. So I don't think they're a very impressive team. Same goes for Vandy. I used to, I have a little bit of soft spot for Vandy because, they've been great athletically this year. They were undefeated in football until the final 3 weeks, and they were undefeated in basketball for 18 games or something. But they've just fallen off. I mean, Missouri's not a bad team by any means. The entirety of the SEC is just a bunch of mediocrity. But they just can't get a win. They just can't. Every single close game they get, they can't finish. I feel bad for Tyler Tanner because, he puts up 27 in 38 minutes, 5 assists, 2 rebounds, and still doesn't win. That's just unfortunate. I even think Vandy is a good team around him. It's just they're not, getting those big wins that they should. I think this is a game very winnable. They just did not. We put this on here to predict last week because I thought USC would put up a fight. They didn't. That's all I got to say about this one. It's just a blowout. They just didn't stand a chance. Marquette. This was a very, not really because of the game itself, but this was a very scruffy match. I did not expect that. You can look it up. I believe this was the game we had two teams just fighting against each other. So that was interesting. But, I just wanted to note on that because, St. John did win and Marquette is trash. So I don't know. I don't know why you're fighting, but, whatever. Once again, we predicted this one thinking that, maybe Indiana would stand a chance because it was a rivalry game. They did not stand a chance. So, yeah, that's I think Purdue's not even that great, but they just decimated. So, that kind of sucks. This isn't even, we have to put this on here because Penn State. Yeah. We're Penn State fans. 2 wins in the conference. Yeah, I don't know what happened. We're a very young team, but granted, like half the team's transferring. So, we just suck. Yeah, that's all I got. Like I said with Kansas, you should not be losing to Cincinnati at home. Darren Peterson shot less than 50%, hit 1 3, and you're telling me this is the top player in the nation. I would take DeBonsta. I would take Naderman. I would take a lot of guys over this guy. Now, granted, he did play his minutes, but he scored less. I just don't think he has stamina either. I'm not a full believer in Darren Peterson. I think he's a talented player. Don't get me wrong. But, man, I'm not sold. Now, if they go and win it all, I'll be sold. But I'm not sold. They can't beat Cincinnati. They sit Darren Peterson in a game that, really, they should have sat him for this. Because you'll see they had more games to come. So, we move, I believe this is into Saturday. I said beforehand, Miami could definitely win this game. They already beat North Carolina, who is a very solid team. You could say they're a contender. I don't personally think so. I'm a full believer in Virginia. I think this team can genuinely win it all. They're very well balanced. They're a great defensive team. And I think Miami came in, had a game plan, and executed it. But when it came down to it, when the chips were on, a 5-point lead for Miami at the half, and they could not win. That's very talented by Virginia to come back and win this game. In a game that, for the ACC mostly, Virginia hasn't been scoring that much. And even then, 86 isn't a ton. It's a lot, but it's not like, Houston putting up 98. So I'm very impressed. I think this Virginia team can win it all. I believe they're number 11 now. I think they should be higher. I think they're a very solid team. Me and Aiden, who wasn't here today, contradicted on this one. I said Tennessee because Nate Amon is very good. He did not show it. 3 for 13 shooting. But I think Tennessee, once again, it's just another case of Virginia can't hold a lead. 4-point lead at the half and outscored by 8 in the second half at home. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. You just can't win a game. That's all I'm saying. I believe Tennessee is ranked now. They should have been ranked beforehand. But I don't know what Vanderbilt's doing. I just don't. They're just selling. That's all I got to say. They're on a downward spiral. Once again, me and Aiden, 2 top-tier contenders facing off. I've said this since the beginning of the season. The 2 biggest frauds, Houston and Purdue. Yeah, I'm not sold on Houston. They are an elite defensive team, don't get me wrong. But when the chips are down, they suck. They're just not a very good team. Now, obviously, losing to Arizona is not that bad. They're number 2 in the nation. But, man, every single time Houston has a big game, they just can't win it. Especially, this wasn't a home game for them. It's listed as a home game, but it was a neutral site game. But, even with Arizona not putting up a great offensive performance, 7, 16, 4, and 7, their top player, Braden Berries, 7 points, didn't matter. They played better defense than Houston. Usually it's the other way around. I seriously thought if Arizona was going to need to win, they would need to control the paint, and they would need to shoot well. They didn't do either of those things, and they won. I'm just not convinced on Houston. Another game in which, it wasn't really that big of a win, but also Arkansas just dominated. They were very good in this game. The SEC is all about shooting. There's, no defense unless you're Florida, and Arkansas just shot better. So, not much to say. They had 5 guys, burgers and fries, with over 12 points. So, Jesus, 13 shots at the line. Yeah, I'd hope you win, buddy. Shea Gildridge-Alexander out there. UConn, for some reason, loses to Creighton and then beats Villanova. Sure. I picked UConn because, you're supposed to pick the ranked team. But I seriously thought at halftime that Villanova was going to win this game because UConn was getting bailed. Oh, my goodness. But UConn just They just got it done. That's all I need to say. The best thing I like to say about UConn is that they are very distributive. Nobody had over 12 points for them in their starting five, which is very solid. Their shooting, disregard this, wasn't that bad. Obviously, all of them over 50%. But the problem with UConn is that, teams have been adapting to, shoot the three. They're not shooting the three. 1 for 5, 1 for 4. Yeah, I'm also not sold on UConn. There's a couple teams at the top, like UConn, Houston, I'm not big on. And this is another reason why. I picked Michigan. I honestly thought, the number one team in the nation against Cameron Boozer, it was another thing of, like, DeBonsta versus Arizona's entire team. I didn't think Boozer could really be that main guy and just carry them to a win. And to be fair, he did not. He had 18 points. But I think Duke really came through here. I think they're a true contender. Now, obviously, Michigan, I still think is the better team. Obviously, the score is proving me wrong. But this Michigan team is very young, which is scary to think about. But also, they're just not losing. Their other loss was at home against Wisconsin, another ranked team on a hot streak. Duke is number 3. They have to be on a hot streak. Their 2 losses, I believe, are both ACC. I forget the first one. The other one was North Carolina, which was, I think, 2 weeks ago on a buzzer beater. These are 2 very talented teams. You could very well see these 2 playing in the Final Four or even in the national championship. If I had to be honest, I think these will be the final 2. So we'll see. This game, I don't think we predicted. Maybe we did. I'm not 100% sure. If we did, we got it both wrong. This is a game in which I'm kind of just shocked. If you didn't know, Illinois led 33-10 with 5 minutes left in the first half. They lost. I don't know how this happened. I'm going to be honest. There's actually, it's right here. Donovan Dent, the hero. You can't really see it, but he went straight up and down the court in 3.5 seconds, scored a layup and won. That's so indicative of Illinois' season. Every single loss is a heartbreaker. And also, when it comes down to it, in terms of these not so much big games, but, games you should probably win, in which case UCLA, not a bad team, but still, they just don't seem to have great defense sometimes. And I think it's more so it's a given the night circumstance instead of a, Illinois is just bad defense, period. Because they don't. They have great defense. But UCLA, I think, showed their flaws, in which case speed beats them. And that's the problem with Illinois. I think if they face a team like Alabama, or really any SEC team, they're in trouble. So that's how I think of them. This is what I'm saying. I think DeBonsta, obviously, he needs to do well. I believe he had 30+. We're on Iowa State because I wanted to show this. But BYU just proved they had better tempo than Iowa State. Another case of tempo and speed winning the battle. 9-point lead at halftime. And, the shooting of their main 2 in Lipley and Jefferson, especially Jefferson, 35 minutes, 4 for 13 shooting. Excuse my French, piss poor, let me say that. So, yeah, I'm not sold also on Iowa State. They could definitely win it all. I think that people wrote them off in the beginning of the year because they were, ranked top 5 and they lost 2 games. Oh, no. But I think that still losing to BYU at home isn't that bad of a loss. They have probably the toughest home environment besides North Carolina or Florida. And I think, obviously, I said earlier, it's just A.J. DeBonsta over there. But it's still a talented team. They're still ranked for a reason. And they can win these big games because you saw they just did. So I don't think it's that bad. Defensive battle through the first half, and then Ohio State couldn't keep up. This Michigan State team is solid, not elite, just solid. And I think they can beat some of the top teams. But I think when it comes to a Michigan, a Duke, something like that, I don't think they'll beat them. They can beat teams like Nebraska, Vanderbilt, stuff like that. Maybe a Florida if they're lucky. But, 6-point win against the Buckeyes, not what you're looking for. I'm going to be honest. So, still, a solid win. It's not, bad. But losing by 3 at halftime against the Buckeyes, not what you want to look out for. The exact opposite about Wisconsin. They can lose to the bottom of the Big Ten and beat the top. It makes no sense. I think if Wisconsin had beaten some of these bottom-tier teams, like I believe they lost to Oregon, they may have lost to us. I'm not 100% sure on that. But, if they just win those games, you could realistically put them in the top 15. And I think this team given the night, because for some reason they're just super bouncy, is very competitive. They also shoot incredibly well. The problem is their defense is terrible. For some reason, Big Ten, usually, I'd say 90% of them, great defense, but no steals for guys they played. I mean, obviously 14 minutes isn't a lot, but it's a good amount. No steals, 1 block, 1 turnover. Obviously, he made up for it, 18 points, 8 of 11 shooting. But if you want to win, you got to have a mixture of offense and defense, something like Michigan, Duke has, and Wisconsin doesn't have it. So, Penn State exists. Yeah, I mean, it's just, we're losing to bad teams now. I honestly thought we'd be like middle of the pack because we're so young. No, we're just at the bottom. We're 2-15 in conference play. We're just bad. That's all I got to say. Boise State is not any better. Obviously, Utah State should be ranked. They're 23-3, but I mean, both my teams just suck. I'm not gonna lie. I think Boise State's better because they're above 500, but that's not saying much. So, we did beat San Jose State, which is 7-20. So that's not a big win. For some reason, what happens is that we'll have people that shoot very well and the defense is very well. And then there's some games where we just do nothing. We just go out there, run some cardio. That's about it. So I don't really understand that. But we move into next week. This is tonight. I did predict this last episode. We're allowed to change our predictions. But I'm still going to stick with what I had in Louisville. It's a classic case of, can Caleb Wilson carry his team to a victory against a fully loaded team? I don't think so. I think this North Carolina team is iffy at best. I think that there's a very good argument they should be unranked. I don't personally think that. But I think this Louisville team can go into North Carolina and get the win. Not easily, but I think they can definitely pull it out in a reasonable 10-point fashion. This is another big game for Kansas. It's the two big game frauds facing off, Kansas and Houston. And I think I'm going to take Houston. I think Kansas, it's Darren Peterson, and that's it. And I think, actually, I wouldn't say that. I think Kansas has some good guys, but they're going to need to play up to Houston's standard. And I think Houston, coming off the loss to Arizona, is going to be hungry for a win. And I think they can definitely get it, but they need to play well. They need to play very well. Now, it's very realistic that Kansas wins this game because they are at home, and they're best when they're at home. But I can't bet against the number 4 team in the nation. This is not accurate because I did it on Monday. So, here goes Missouri again, taking on another ranked team at home. Last time I picked Vanderbilt. I'm going to bet against them again. I think I would have picked, if Tennessee and Vanderbilt played, I would pick Tennessee. Actually, I think they did play. But I think I actually did this. I picked Tennessee in the away game against Vanderbilt. But still, I just like Tennessee more than Missouri by a lot. So I'm just going to pick Tennessee based off that fact. Now, it's very realistic that Missouri wins because the SEC is a chaos. It's just chaos. And also $6 for a ticket. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. But probably nosebleed seats, but still, it's a solid game at 9 p.m. tomorrow. So that's actually accurate. I will not be staying up for this game. UCF already has an absolutely massive, at the time, win against Texas Tech, but they were at home. I can't say the same for when UCF is away, so I will take the Cougars. DeBonsta just needs to keep his team afloat. That's what he needs. He just needs to keep his team in March Madness because it's a mad dash to the finish line, and we're creeping up on it. So I think BYU can get it done, but this is a nasty spread. I don't know if I would hit on that for either of them. It could either be a BYU win by 21 or it could be a UCF win by 2. So yeah, that's a tough one to pick. This is another great one. I think St. John's is on the up and up, and UConn is UConn. So, yeah, this is a tough one. But I think if I had to go with one, I will go with UConn. I think that UConn just kind of needs a morale win. And I think they obviously have had them because they're 25-3. But I think that most of these big games, even some of them like Creighton, which I mentioned, obviously the definition of mediocre, they are just not winning in incredible fashion. And as of right now, they're not even leading their conference. You can see St. John's a game ahead. So I'm a full believer in that UConn can bounce back. They've always been a good basketball team. But they need to get a big win. And I think this win would be one. I think this could be one that sets them over the top as a contender. Vandy is hanging on by a loose thread, and they're on a losing streak. Now, granted, they are at home. Georgia, who used to be ranked around the same, 24-25, headed to town. I'm going to finally pick Vandy. I think Vandy at home can beat Georgia. The problem is that it's going to come down to tempo, and I think Vandy, especially at the end of games, they love to foul, and they love to play slow, and I think you're going to need to keep up with Georgia if you want to win this game. Yeah, I think this is a good game. Easily, Georgia can win. They can run away with it, but especially with Vandy on a slide. But Vandy just needs to win to stay in the SEC tournament to have a chance in March Madness, because I think as of right now, they are the 12th seed, maybe the 11th. They need a win, and they need it bad. The same goes for both these teams. I had A&M to win the entirety of the SEC besides Florida, because Florida's Florida. But I don't think I can pick them. I think A&M has really been on a downslide. They were, I believe, 8-1 in SEC play at one point. They've been 1-4 since. I'm going to say 1-5. This Arkansas team is the fastest-paced team besides Bama in the SEC. And I think when it comes down to it, it's just going to be the three ball. Who shoots the three ball better? And I think Arkansas does. So, once again, $18 is not that bad. I honestly think the SEC values these way too low. They rely on their football. But I just think this is going to be another good one, 9 o'clock on ESPN2. If I can hit the next slide, that'd be nice. This is a true test for both these two teams. I think neither of these two teams have had really a big win. I think they definitely can get a big win. I just think it comes down to who you're going to beat. And I think you can see the records for these teams are the exact same. This is going to be a true test. Who has it? Who has that, fight to really get the big win? Michigan is number one in the nation. Michigan State is more physical than Purdue, but Purdue is a better shooting team. And I've said multiple times that I like physicality more than shooting. I think defense is more important than offense. But Purdue is at home, and that is tough to bet against. I think, obviously, also being a rivalry game is, there's bad blood in the air. But I think when it comes down to it, I just like Purdue. I just think that, Purdue, I'm not a big fan of, because every single time they would go into March Madness, then they would lose in the first and second round. Then the next year, they'd be number one ranked. But at some point, Purdue has to break through the mold and just get a big win. And I think they can get it against Michigan State. Does this make them a contender, in my opinion? No, because Michigan State has not had a big win all year. Plus, they've tripped up on games like Iowa and Wisconsin and Ohio State. So, I also think if there's a rematch in March Madness, absolute cinema game. I won't hold my mic in the other hand. But still, I think this is going to be a very good game. Once again, another very good game. But I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I'm picking Michigan. I think Illinois, especially at home, can get the win. But you just saw, Illinois just lost to UCLA. I don't think they're that bad of a team. They're number 10 in the nation for a reason. But there's so many teams I would take in the Big Ten over them. I would take Michigan State. I would take Purdue. I would take Michigan. I can't name any other ones. But still, I think that Illinois is fighting in a tough Big Ten. And I think as of right now, I just can't bet against Michigan, especially since their two losses were games that they had lost by a hair, and they were against solid teams. Wisconsin isn't elite, but obviously Duke is number one in the nation. But Illinois is favored, understandably so. I think they can definitely come out with a win over Michigan. But I cannot bet against Michigan in the way they've been playing. Same goes for Duke. I wasn't really defending Duke. I'm going to be honest. I thought Duke was a solid team, not an elite team, especially with Boozer being, averaging a double-double, which in college basketball is just absolutely insane. This is easily the best dude in the entirety of college basketball. Sorry, A.J. Devonsta. But Virginia, in my opinion, is actually a true test. I think Virginia is a very solid team, very underrated, still at number 11. But Duke is now number 1, and they don't want to fall off the pedestal. But this makes no sense. How is this $900 and the Duke-Michigan game was like $250? That makes no sense to me. Maybe this is a rivalry game. I didn't know that if it is, but yeah, I'm not going to bet against Duke, number 1 in the nation. Now, Virginia can definitely win this game, but they need to play some great defense, something they've been able to do. But Duke has been the best defensive team, so you're going to need to beat them at their own game. Middle of the pack ACC, Louisville fast pace, Clemson defensive. I'm going against my train of thinking. I'm going to pick Louisville. I think Clemson has not had a big win all year. Obviously they're 20-8, well above 500. But the 5 losses they've had in the SEC were not against elite opponents besides Duke, because it's Duke. But I just think Clemson is not that impressive. I think Louisville. There's a reason why Louisville's ranked and Clemson isn't. But I also think Louisville's tempo. You always say physicality beats tempo, but Louisville's tempo is fast, and you got to catch up to it. And Clemson relies on the big man a lot on their defense. And Louisville, if they're so speedy, they could just, sprint right around them. So, obviously, Clemson can come up with the win, especially at Little John Stadium. Must be sponsored by Papa John's. But I think Louisville can definitely get out the win, and I think they will. I'm sorry, Vandy. I'm going to take Kentucky. I think Vandy has been on the slide, like I said. As I said, they also get a win, at home. But going into Kentucky, in my opinion, as of right now, the most underrated team in the entirety of college basketball. Still a very dangerous team. But I don't know. I just don't think Vandy has that it factor, something some of these contenders do. Honestly, like Miami of Ohio, the shock of the entirety of college basketball, the only undefeated team left, knock on wood, there's no wood near me. But I just think that Vandy has kind of lost their step. They have 6 losses all in the SEC. I think they get a 7th. And I think Kentucky is not a bad team by any means, but they're not an elite team by any means as well. Once again, Kansas, the big game. Can they win it? I don't believe so. I stated all my reasons earlier. I won't go into them. Arizona has a very well-rounded team. They were kind of injured. That's why they lost one against Texas Tech in OT, 78-75. But you play them at their full strength. I think they are the best team. Maybe Michigan, maybe Duke, but I would take Arizona to win it all as of right now. It's going to come down to, does Darren Peterson, A, want to play some basketball, and B, want to play it good? So we'll see. Can he be the contender? Once again, this is deja vu. A Big 12 matchup, contender versus pretender. So I think J.D. Toppin is a very solid player. He is the highest averaging double-double. He's Nikola Jokic all over again. But I'm still going to take Iowa State. I think they're a bit high at number 4. I'm not going to lie to you. I think there's some teams behind them that definitely should be higher than Iowa State. But especially at home, Texas Tech is such a weird team because they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. I already stated they lost to UCF, but they already beat, I believe it was Houston and Arizona. I don't know how they did that, but it's a very real chance Texas Tech wins the entirety of the Big 12 because they've just been a solid team, not an elite team. But if they can beat these top-tier teams, who's to say what they can do in March Madness? Now, am I saying they win it all? No, I don't think so. But they can go into Iowa State and win. I don't personally think so, but they definitely can. Once again, I have USC on here. Last time you were on here, buddy, you lost by 50. I'm going to predict that you'll lose by 50. Nebraska needs a bounce back. They have definitely been on a downturn. I think they've lost, it's 4 of their last 6. So, they were undefeated at one point. I think it was 21, maybe 20-0. And they've just not been the same. Now, granted, they've been playing tougher opponents, Michigan State, Illinois, teams like that. But one of these you have to win. And obviously, USC is not an elite team. We saw Illinois put the belt on and smack them. So, it's a defensive battle. I just like Nebraska a bit more. Oh, this is going to be a great one. I think this could be game of the week. I won't say because I think obviously 4-2 is pretty good bet to be game of the week. But this is going to be either a fast-paced shootout like Bama just had against Arkansas, or it's going to end 2-0. I think what's going to happen is it's either Tennessee controls the tempo. It's going to come down to who controls the tempo. Does Tennessee, play it slow and win, or does Bama shoot the 3 and win? I think this one I have to take Tennessee. Obviously, I've been saying the speed is key this week with some of the teams, but Tennessee has been on a rise. I wouldn't say Bama's been on a downfall by any means. They just beat Arkansas, not a bad team at all. But I just like this Tennessee team more, if that makes sense. I think Bama, both these teams very well-rounded, but Bama's stamina, and especially their fouling, is not great. You can see them definitely get fouled out, get frustrated. If Tennessee just plays the game right, they play it may I add, if they play it safe, I think it can definitely get the win. I'd like to note as well, Bama is number 2 in the SEC at 10-4, and then there's Florida at 12-2. I don't think I have Florida on here. That's very impressive from Florida. So, I just said St. John's losing to UConn. They're going to need to bounce back. I think they get it over Villanueva. I think St. John's and UConn are easily the top 2 in the Big East. They're going to both make March Madness. Maybe they play against each other. But what I think is very cool, this is somewhat underrated. They play at Madison Square Garden, same place as I believe the Knicks and the Rangers. That's just cool. That's all I had to add. It's kind of cool. Now, granted, the pricing's ridiculous. $123 for a basketball game is ridiculous. But I just think St. John's in a primetime game, for some reason, they're very good. I don't know why, but I just think, especially against Villanueva, a solid team, not elite team by any means, a very solid team, probably going to make March Madness. I just like their odds. Oh, I guess Florida is on here. Well, I'm picking them because I don't think Arkansas really stands a chance. Florida is the hottest team in college basketball. It's not even close. They were unranked at one point, and now they're number 7. Now, there are some questions, should they be number 7? They've jumped up so high. But I think they're easily the best team in the SEC by a square mile. They could beat anyone in there by 30. But also, they could lose to anyone in there by like 10. And I think Arkansas, it's going to be physicality versus speed. But especially in, Florida, in Gatorville, it's not going to be a fun matchup for Arkansas. And they're going to need to play aggressive, something they've not been able to do. You saw it against Bama. There was no aggressive. It was just all offense. So I just like Florida. I think Florida really wins the SEC. Another great one, Gonzaga and St. Mary. I'd like to mention St. Mary lost to Boise State. That's my team right there. But I think Gonzaga also, a lot of questions. Obviously 9th in the nation. But they only have 2 losses, mind you. And I think they still can win it all. It's always that question of can Gonzaga get past, the Elite 8 into that Final Four. Because that's usually where they range, the Sweet 16, Elite 8. Then they lose. This could be the year. Obviously, they only had, I believe it was, I want to say 4, maybe 5 losses last year. But the schedule's been pretty easy, which means they should have some stamina. And I think that St. Mary, a solid team. Not bad by any means. But there's a clear difference, a gap difference. One of them's unranked. One of them's number 9. So I like Gonzaga. We finally get to the final few slides. I feel like I've been doing this forever, talking forever. But Wyoming and Boise, it's my team. I'm going to pick them. I'm going to be honest. But this is a very losable game. I think, obviously, the records are 1 game apart. But we do have a bit of a lead, 2 games in the conference. But also, we're not even close to the top. 3rd place is 12-4. So that's a bit rough. But there's a lot of games. Looking back, Boise definitely could have won. And I think if they win those games, especially the ones that come to mind are the ones against Grand Canyon, not a great team by any means. If we win those games, there's a very real argument that we should be in the Mountain West tournament, win it all, make the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. But I just think we need to keep our foot on the gas pedal. We need to win at home. Penn State also needs to do the same thing, but they're not going to because they're Penn State. They're just bad. I don't understand it. They just never seem to want to win, like, ever. They lost to Oregon, who's last in the Big Ten. So, actually, I think we're last now because of that game. But 20% is ridiculous. We should have 2%. We've been playing terrible. Nothing about this team is good. I've never been so, disgusted by a Penn State team. $15 is too much to go to this team, if you want to call it that. They just have no chemistry. They just look lost. I don't understand it. I've never seen anything like that. We head to the final slide. Boise State, Fresno State. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to take Boise State again. I think Fresno State, especially at home, it's a very losable game once again. But I think Boise's been not on the up and up, but especially since, 8-8 in conference play. They've been the definition of mediocrity. They're always, a back-and-forth team. You never can close a game when you're Boise State because we have the most OT games in the entirety of college basketball because we're Boise State. But I think we can definitely, once again, it's another case of can we control the tempo because we're not a great offensive team. Defensively, pretty solid, very well-rounded. But I think we can come out and win it. But that'll do it. Let's hope I'm Joe Montana and go undefeated because, he was undefeated in Super Bowls. But, I guess we should go back to the records. Aiden will send me, if he sees this, hopefully he does, he will send me his, picks he did better than me last week. So if he chips at it, I'm 10 games ahead. He can come back, but I'm gonna probably go get some sheets. I'm very hungry. But that'll do it. See ya.